Hi there, welcome to the latest edition of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this one is looking at the connections that Humza Yousaf, the First Minister of Scotland, has had in the past with Islamic fundamentalists, terror groups, and some pretty dodgy people. Now, again, this is one of those topics that has been in the public domain before. In fact, all the information I'm about to give you is actually in the public domain. However, not a lot of people have seen it, and even less mainstream media, if any, touch on any of the subjects I'm about to discuss with you. I must also say at this point that this is not the last of my top times I'll touch this topic, because I'm just scratching the surface, I believe, at present. And what happened last night, one of our lovely viewers sent me a message, private message, with some links to the websites that I'm about to quote. So thank you very much for doing that, and I welcome any pointers going forward for future videos. Now, this document, or the two documents, and I'll put the links to both in the description for this video. Both of them were published in February 2023, almost a year ago. And it was in the run up to the party election where the SNP were looking for the new leader. And these two websites were discussing the suitability of Humza Yousaf to be potentially the leader of the Scottish Parliament. And they were looking into to trying to figure out what sort of level his Islamic influence had and could potentially have for Scotland if he was indeed, which came to pass, he was voted in as the leader of the SNP and in turn the leader of the Scottish Government. They claimed that he'd passed ties with Islamic extremists, a history of aiding them through his funding. Now, a quote from Focus on Western Islamism, which is FWI apparently, they published a very lengthy report on Humza, and the report covered the Scottish Islamic Foundation, which is a video topic that I've already covered. I'll maybe put the link to that also in the description. This was the Scottish Islamic Foundation was set up by Humza, a female who was his girlfriend at the time, went on to be his first wife, and three of his cousins. And the Scottish Islamic Foundation had got £400,000 worth of grants from the Scottish Government while he was working for the Scottish Government as the press aide to Alex Salmond, and the majority of the funding was for an event called Glasgow Islamic Festival, Islamafest I think it was meant to be, which never took place. They received £400,000 worth of funding for an event that never took place, and about, I think it was just under half of that was eventually returned to the Scottish Government because it wasn't, the reason for the grant wasn't fulfilled. However, there's approximately £200,000 which nobody knows where it ended up. These reports, back in 2008, the Yousaf invited three known Islamic fundamentalist stroke terrorists to Edinburgh to meet the then Minister of External Affairs and Culture. And this meeting was organised by the Scottish Islamic Foundation in 2008, and the guests included a fugitive Hamas commander who rose in the ranks and eventually was on their political bureau, a leading member of the Muslim Brotherhood, who we'll cover more in a few minutes, and a representative from the Friends of Al-Aqsa, which was a Hamas-fronted organisation. Now, the guy, the Hamas commander who was there at the time, was a Mohammed Sawala. I believe I said that's right. And in 2006, which was 2 years before Humza brought this guy to Edinburgh to meet the Minister of External Affairs and Culture, he was described by the BBC as being a fugitive of Hamas. And Humza brought him to Edinburgh to meet government officials. This was in 2008. Then, in 2010, the Scottish Islamic Foundation, which we've discussed, was classified as an entry-level group contributing to the threat of radicalisation. Now, that wasn't me, any other group, non-Muslim group. This was indeed the Kuliam Foundation. Now, the Kuliam Foundation don't exist now, but back in 2010, they were a Muslim-ran counter-extremist group. who tried to protect the good name of Islam, and point out people who weren't so good. And they are describing the Scottish Islamic Foundation, which had Humza, his future wife, and 3 of his cousins as directors, took £400,000 off the Scottish Government for a thing that didn't happen, and they were classified by other fellow Muslims as an entry-level group contributing to the threat of radicalisation. Fantastic, isn't it? Then we fast forward to 2013. There was £400,000 announced by Humza that he had managed to secure for a charity called Islamic Relief. Now, Islamic Relief was established by the Muslim Brotherhood, who also had one of the 3 people that was invited to Edinburgh 5 years earlier by Humza in their ranks. And the Muslim Brotherhood, they're classed as a terror group by not only the United States of America, but also other countries throughout Europe. And Islamic Relief, formed by the Muslim Brotherhood, inverted commas, a terrorist organisation in the eyes of a lot of Western countries, they had listed as their media spokesman, prior to his election as an MSP for the SNP, as Humza Yousaf. So Humza Yousaf, before he was elected, just to clarify this, was the media spokesperson for a charity called Islamic Relief, which was formed by and established by the Muslim Brotherhood, who are an Islamic fundamentalist group described by many Western countries as a terror group. He's a spokesperson. Now, I've also had a lot of people send me stuff and suggest that his cousin Saeed was one of the directors of the Scottish Islamic Foundation, one of the 3 cousins he had, and he was also a member of the Scottish National Party, so much so that he was actually a candidate for a parliament seat, which unfortunately for us, he didn't get voted in. But that's another guy, his cousin, who was very highly placed in the SNP. Now, I will do a wee bit of digging more on Humza and more on this cousin of his, Saeed. Now, he, in 2005, quoted as calling for a caliphate, which for those who don't understand what caliphate means, it's a rising of the Muslims against the rest of us. A war, calling for a religious war against the infidel, that'll be me and you, right? And that was in 2000, so was that 2005? In 2006, this was a cracker. Saeed, Humza's cousin, who was the director with co-director, and is still, and very recently been described as very close to Humza. In 2006, he defended and praised a man who was currently in America running a mosque called Anwar al-Awlaki. And Anwar al-Awlaki was getting some bad press, and Saeed suggested it was just because 2 of the 9/11 bombers had prayed in his mosque. That was the only connection this man had. And Saeed described him as a peaceful person that preaches nothing but peace. That was his defence of this guy. As some people, rightly or wrongly, I don't know, suggested he was tied to the 9/11 bombers. Defended in 2006 by Saeed. However, al-Awlaki later became an Al-Qaeda leader in the Arabian Peninsula. He ran a gang of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, before he was eventually killed in 2011 by a drone strike due to his terrorist connections. So, again, now I've done all this stuff, I'll give you my personal opinion on this. These are not new facts. They're just maybe some of them new to me, some of them I knew about previously, just didn't have enough for a video. And this is the tip of the iceberg. And I've already touched on one before in the video. This is a follow-up video to that, and I have no problem doing further videos as more information comes to me. If every part of the information I've read out to you there is not news to you, then I do apologise and thank you for sticking in for 10 minutes for the video in the first place. However, I make no apology to that, because none of this information is known by everyone. And I think when we are having someone run our country, then the public should be aware of these things. So, if you've heard some of this before, fine. If it's not much news to you, then great. And, let other people know. Click the share button. Show it to your friends. Share it in your Facebook groups. If you're in, WhatsApp groups and stuff with similar-minded people, share it. Because if there's only 10 in the group, you'll probably find 8 or 9 of them are not aware of this stuff. And I think for a party who stand there since even Nicola Sturgeon's day, she was really good at it, telling us how open and transparent they wanted to be. Even Humza Yousaf wouldn't have problems with discussing this stuff, because obviously he would plead that there's nothing bad in all this at all, which is great. It should be open for debate, and if there's nothing bad in it at all, then all the better for Humza. But it's absolutely scaring the shite out of me, if I'm perfectly honest. This man, with his background, is now running our country by default. Nobody voted him in as the leader of the party. He was voted in as a constituency member for Scottish Government in Holyrood. And the only people that voted him in was the SNP party. Now, they may or may not be aware of these things. If they're not aware of them, then they're not very good at putting people forward to run their party and in turn our country. If they didn't know these things previously, does that mean they've done no background checks on any of them? And if they did know about it, then what does that tell you about them? They don't care. It is another great example of either complete ridiculous and terrible management, or because they've not found out about them, or they do know about them and they just don't care. And I think either could be true. The SNP are able to be completely incompetent, or they could be completely out of touch with reality and how the public feel on several matters. So there we go. This one, as I say, is not the end. I will dig deeper, and if anybody has any other information that I haven't put out in the broadcast yet, send it to me, craighoustontalks2@gmail.com. And thank you very much for the lovely lady that sent me and pointed me in the right direction from this one. Okay, if you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. There'll be some recommendations in the corners of the other videos you might want to watch. And the most important thing of all, have a great day. Bye now.